So at 19, my guest today survived a sexual assault in college. And when the institution she reported to didn't believe her, she made a decision that would define the rest of her life. She turned her pain into purpose, earning her master's from Johns Hopkins, and become an AASECT-certified sex therapist. Today, she is the founder of Cushing Counseling and Sex Therapy Pro, helping people say the things they've never been able to say out loud, and building a platform to make that kind of healing accessible to everyone. And that story is coming up next. Is something standing between you and your happiness? It was for me. I had to face my depression and the constant negative self-talk. Therapy helped me realize I deserve to be happy. That's why this podcast is called I Choose Health, because I made the choice to heal and I want to share that with you. As a gift to you, we've partnered with BetterHelp as our sponsor to help you start your own healing journey. We all face moments when life feels overwhelming, whether it's stress, anxiety, or just feeling stuck. Talking to someone can make a real difference. And that's where our sponsor BetterHelp comes in. BetterHelp offers professional online therapy that's convenient, affordable, and entirely on your schedule. You can connect with a licensed therapist by video, phone, or even chat, whatever works best for you. Let our sponsor BetterHelp support you on your journey to better mental health. You can get 10% off your first month by going to betterhelp.com/iChooseHealth. That's betterhelp.com/iChooseHealth for 10% off your first month. Take the first step toward feeling better today.
As a teenager, I decided to live better, so I gave up the meat, eggs, and cheddar. At 20 and 30, I wanted more, so I strengthened my mind and my core. Living a life that is healthier and wealthier because I choose health.
Welcome back to the I Choose Health podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Leslie. Today, we have with me our guest, Vanessa Cushing, and I'm really excited to have her on the show today to really delve into some really deep and interesting topics. So Vanessa, welcome to the I Choose Health podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Stefan.
Yeah. So Vanessa, obviously your story is a very deep and personal one. And if you don't mind, for our audience who's probably not familiar with your story, just going a little bit deeper into why your experience led you into the work that you're doing today.
It's a really good question, and I don't know if I've fully told the whole story on a podcast, but when I was freshman year, it's actually very common for sexual assault or rape to happen in freshman year of college to women. 1 in 3 women are sexually assaulted in their lifetime, so it's a very common story. But I was at school and I went to a bar and was drugged and raped orally and vaginally. And it was very traumatic for me. Probably the most traumatic thing that has ever happened to me. And the person that did so was actually a senior, and he was the captain of the hockey team at the institution I was at. And I didn't report it for a long time because I was really scared of the backlash that would happen to me. I also thought it was my fault. Oh, it was my fault that I went to a bar. I shouldn't have been there, all the things. And I think every survivor listening to this can relate to that. But when I reported it, the institution actually, he had a lawyer, and they didn't tell me that he had a lawyer, didn't tell me I could have a lawyer. And it was an extremely re-traumatizing experience. The way that the whole situation went down, they essentially made it seem like I made the whole thing up, even though I had a medical exam the next day by a nurse at the school. And she had written very detailed notes. There was blood, all the things. And they concluded that, and they prolonged the investigation so this individual could graduate. And then he graduated, and I was left with absolutely nothing. I felt completely alone. No one believed me. Like, the school didn't believe me. They protected this monster. And he was actually able to write a letter to me that was to me after the investigation saying, like, I don't know why you would do this. You're mentally ill. And that fired me up.
Mhm.
And for a long time, like before I reported, I was deeply depressed, and really had a lot of like suicidal ideation, all the things. But when they came back, when I showed strength, and they came back and they attacked me, that sparked something in me. I did not like that they
Mhm.
questioned my integrity, really. And when I got that letter, I said to myself, I'm done with this school. So the next semesters that followed, I had a 4.0. And when I applied to transfer, I collected every single acceptance. I got accepted into every single school that I got into, that I applied to. And I gave them to the dean that gave me that determination, that said it was my fault. And I said, no, I'm not going to do this. And I'm not going to let any woman feel alone and crazy the way I did. And that's why I became a therapist. That's why I became a sex therapist. That's why I became a sexual trauma therapist,
Mhm.
to help women believe that it wasn't their fault and they can find meaning and purpose in what happened to them and come out the other side better, lighter, freer.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I know it's definitely something that's really heavy and difficult to share, and you know, I can't imagine what it took to, following that to even try to continue at school and then get a 4.0 and
Mhm.
then be able to then transfer after that. So, it took a lot of courage, a lot of strength. Like, where do you feel like you generated that strength
I think it was
for
rage.
that? Mm,
100% rage. Rage against the institution, and just, like, to prove that, like, I am not that person. I am not a crazy person who made this up, and, like, I am better than you, and I'm gonna
right.
show you that I'm better than you. I think a lot of spite too. I like anger. Anger is a good emotion because it can propel you to do a lot of things.
Mhm. Yeah, and I understand that with that institutional betrayal. And I know that you say you're now working as a sex trauma
Mm.
therapist. How did that shape the kind of therapist that you decided to become?
100%. Because I didn't have someone in my corner. Like, nobody really understands what it's like to be assaulted and have your power taken away from you, your agency taken away from you, unless you've gone through it. And that was the whole path for me to get here. And now I help people that go through that, and I train clinicians to then help people go through that. So nobody feels alone.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I'm thinking about it because, as you said, he was the captain of a
Mhm.
certain team, and it makes me wonder. Again, all these institutions are really motivated by, I would say money, because
Yes.
what's the reason that you're protecting someone that is doing something, that horrid? And so do you think that that is also a motivation that led them to, uh, I guess, deal with you in the way that they did, and then, obviously protecting him throughout the process?
Well, I mean, I think when it comes down to it, it's a moral issue. And when a moral issue is presented in front of you, you have two options. And the first option is the easiest: secrecy and silence. It's the perpetrator's first level of defense. And when that doesn't work, they typically come at the victim and discredit them. But when it's a moral issue, the survivor asks you to take a stand against it, and that is usually a harder thing to do than just to be quiet. So I think it's a lack of courage and also a lack of accountability. I know that this happened to many other women at the school was Connecticut College, and this was reported over and over and again. And it is a private school, so it costs about $80,000 in tuition to get to go there. So if this were to come out against the school, yes, they would lose a shit ton of money, and they
Mhm.
don't want to stain on their reputation, but by doing this creates a larger stain.
Right. Now, I know obviously that, sexual trauma or sexual assault doesn't only
Mhm.
occur, to women on college campuses,
Right.
but, I imagine that the numbers are inordinately higher for women on campus. Myself now being a dad of my daughter is 2 right now. And,
Mm.
obviously there's a good couple of years before she goes to college, but, how do we prepare our children, how do we prepare our daughters for situations like this, right? I know not every horrible thing that happens can be avoided, but what are the tools that we can equip our daughters and our children with to kind of prepare them for a situation like this?
Mhm. It's a good question. And I think it comes down to teaching consent to both sons and daughters. What is consent? When a family member asks to give you a hug and that makes you uncomfortable, how do you say no?
Mhm.
And being able to say no and be able to hear no and accept no as well. So it goes to both sides, both men and women. It is hearing no and thanking someone for their no and allowing them that space to say no. And then also saying no is difficult as well. I really like, I taught women self-defense for a while, like with Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Mhm.
I recommend that to all survivors and all women, just so they know how to protect themselves. But if you're in a situation where you are drugged, like those skills really don't matter. Um, yeah.
Right, right. And so is there, because I know you said it was Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, is there a certain advantage in terms of a situation like that where Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is more beneficial or?
Yeah, I mean, being able to get away from someone,
Mhm,
like if someone grabs your wrist, like there's this like very easy maneuver where you just turn it out and like
mhm,
you're able, even if that person has strength, you are able to leverage like different body positions to get out of a situation. So that's like if you physically have to escape. But I think the first level of defense is consent. Everything is consent driven
mhm,
and everything is safety driven, and we respect no.
right. So as you're working as a sex therapist, I know that a lot of therapists, just in regular therapy, they get almost no training in sex therapy.
Yes, no.
Why is that such a blind spot in the mental health field?
I don't know why it's such a blind spot other than sex is very stigmatizing and people don't talk about sex. People feel ashamed to talk about sex, but yet we're all having it. It's not just
Mhm,
in the therapy field too, it's in the medical field. Doctors receive around 4 hours of medical sexual health education during their entire educational programming. And I went to a conference recently and I measured this with clinicians and physicians, and a lot of people said they had actually less, and this includes
mhm,
OBGYNs, by the way. So
right.
it is across the board that sexual education, sexual health training is very marginalized.
Mhm. Now, what does an AASECT certification actually require,
Ugh,
and why does that rigor matter?
it's a lot. So we have to get our master's program, we have to do our bachelor's, then we have to do our master's in clinical mental health counseling, and then it takes about 5 years. It took me about 5 years to get my AASECT certification. So we go through very rigorous, educational components, and we start with this thing called a SAR. It's called the Sexual Attitudes Reassessment.
Uh-huh.
So essentially 3 days of going through the entire Pornhub category, every category on
Mm,
Pornhub. We're at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, sitting with my dog on the couch, and we're watching knife play. And then we're discussing how it makes us feel to know our biases and things that we might not be able to work with. I know that I'm not able to work with sexual violence perpetrators because of my biases, but that is basically how you are trained. And then we go into a huge educational component. And then we have 25 hours of individual supervision with an individual supervisor and 25 hours of group supervision. So over 50 hours of supervision and probably 150 hours of in-person clinical work, clinical educational training. And you have to see patients under your supervisor and see, I think, about 3,000 hours of sex therapy
uh-huh.
patients before you're an AASECT-certified sex therapist.
So I think one of the things that I'm thinking about is what leads perpetrators to, other than just an aversion in their sexual experience, but what leads them to do what they do to victims, right? Because, I'm looking at in your experience, again, he's captain of his team, right? Again, that's a position of power.
Mhm.
He's in a pretty good school as well. That's another I would say factor or element of power. So is it something today I guess there is there a play to there being a power in like having a certain amount of power in a situation that leads up to a perpetrator doing something like that?
It's a good question, and everybody demonizes power. But I think power is neither good nor bad. It just amplifies the person that you are. If
Mm,
you're a person in power, you are able to either do a lot of really good things or a lot of really bad things. So, like money, for example, gives people a sense of power because they are able to amplify whatever they do with that money.
mhm,
Um, so I wouldn't say that it is power inherently. It is the person you are combined with the power. But I think more so it's a sense of entitlement and maybe a sense of misogyny, of like hating women and feeling like women, um, we are designed to please you, and also maybe a little bit of pornography, thinking that every woman wants sex and
mhm,
I should be giving sex to this woman, and that's what masculinity has taught me to do and porn has taught me to do, even if she doesn't want it.
mhm. As you were talking about the different categories, and I imagine like whoever's coming up with these categories, or these different types of, videos that they put out there. Um, I'm not sure who they're consulting to create these
Mhm.
different types of categories. Um, and I know we can't really speak to what type of mind is creating that.
Mm.
But what have you seen in terms of the impact of, for perpetrators who have been consuming pornography, and how often they are, people committing violent sexual acts towards other people?
I wish I could say because there's no, I don't know of any really good research study of perpetrators of sexual violence and pornography usage. I think it would be interesting to see um, what what categories they are watching, also the intensity at which they are watching. But I think it more so goes to the beliefs of the person and what they
Mm,
believe that like women are here to serve me. I mean, that is a belief that will lead to negative things usually.
right, right. So, let's get into the work itself,
Mhm.
right? Because I know that as you're helping people, deal with sexual trauma on all different types of levels, but what are the most common issues that you see walk through your door, right? Whether it's dealing with desire, discrepancies,
Mhm.
trauma, identity. So, what are the common issues that you typically handle or deal with?
It's a good question. I would say there's for 3 I'm gonna give 3 subtypes. Okay, couples. Desire discrepancy is the number one thing couples come in with. Women is low sexual desire, pain during sex. Men is, sometimes low sexual desire, but more erectile issues, so erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation.
Right, right. Yeah, and I've obviously had, friends that have dealt with similar things, and
Everyone
you
does.
yeah, and then sometimes, you're in a situation where you're in a relationship where you're not emotionally connecting with someone, but they see themselves as like, hey, we're married, like, I desire um I desire to be sexually pleased, right? But then you're trying to tell that partner like, hey, we haven't really spoken about these emotional issues. Like I would like us to speak through these emotional issues first before we talk about, the direction of our sex life. How do you help someone who has a partner that emotionally doesn't want to do the work, and is just demanding, pretty much demanding sex, versus just connecting with their partner emotionally first?
Mhm. I mean, it's hard to get people out of that mindset because there are a lot of people who believe that, okay, I'm married and my partner should have sex with me. But it's also really important to know what that mindset is actually doing to your partner. If I'm like, Stefan, I'm coming over for dinner tonight and I don't care what you think and I'm gonna barge into your house, how do you think you would feel about that?
Right,
I'm
right,
just gonna take the food out of your fridge and I'm gonna heat it up. How would you feel about that?
right.
Probably
Yeah,
would. It's not your food. Like, everybody has the right to have their own pleasure, and you are in charge of your own pleasure. Your partner is not obligated to give you any sort of pleasure. You are not obligated, you don't deserve anything from anyone.
right,
So, if you want to have pleasure, you should give yourself pleasure. And then we need to look at the behaviors that are causing maybe your partner to have lower sexual desire. And one of those things is anger and resentment, from the pressure you are putting on her.
Mhm.
That is a poison of sexual desire, the number one poison. So if your partner doesn't want to have sex with you and you're pressuring her, well, let's look at our own behavior
Right.
of what we are doing to contribute to this problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, in speaking of like creating a safe environment, how do we create safety for someone who's saying something out loud for the first time? Right. Because I know,
Mhm.
sometimes people hold things in for a really long time. So how do we create that safe environment for that person?
Like in a sexual, like in sex therapy?
Like in sex therapy, or even let's just say where, and I imagine that obviously we want to make sure that people are going to someone like yourself who's an
Mhm.
expert, but in a case where, they may not necessarily feel comfortable speaking to
Mhm.
an expert, they may feel comfortable with a family member or a friend. How do we create that safe space for them?
I would just say hold space for them. And what I do after always, when someone shares always, is thank you for sharing that with me.
Mhm.
Is thank you for sharing that with me. Use active listening and say what I'm hearing you say and what I'm feeling from you is like a lot of pain. And I
Right,
get that. Thank them, don't criticize them, just listen.
right.
Be with them.
Has there been a client transformation that has really like stuck with you
Mm,
that you remember?
I have many. Um, one of my favorite I have so many I could tell you about.
Mhm.
Sorry. I have one client, and when she first came to see me, she was suicidal, and she had so much weight on her. She was abused sexually as a child. Um, she was having sex that she didn't wanna have with her husband. Um, she was in a relationship she didn't really love. It wasn't connective, and we worked so hard. She's an amazing woman. She worked her ass off,
Mhm.
and finally, like, we processed the trauma, and she was reconnecting with herself, reconnecting with her husband, reconnecting with people in her life, friends, family members. And finally, she had sex that she wanted to have for the first time, and it felt good to her. And
Mhm.
she thought she was asexual. She thought she couldn't actually love someone.
Mm.
And I'm super proud of her. Like, she's an amazing human being.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about it, like, where does sexual trauma show up in someone's life that most people wouldn't connect back to trauma?
I mean, everywhere. I mean, I think the biggest thing about sexual trauma, especially if it happens as a child, is um, the connection piece with other people. People might not be open, people might not be vulnerable. People might only have surface level connections with people. People might want to avoid. It is really a disconnection from connection in general, which I think can be really hard. People don't expect it to show up in relationships, but it
Mhm.
does.
Now, speaking of relationships, and I know this is probably where a lot of times it gets interesting. Obviously, every case that you deal with is important,
Mhm.
and um, you know, I wonder when it comes to working with couples specifically, what's different about that room versus the individual work when you're just working with either a husband or a wife? Like, how does it look like when you're doing that work with both couples
I
or with
mean,
both
you've
individuals?
got 3 things in the room. You've got husband, you've got wife, and you've got the relationship. And all 3 of those things have background to them. Like, you're not just dealing with one person and, like, learning about one person, understanding one person. You have to learn about both people, and then you have to, work with the dynamic that both people have created and that
Mhm.
has been around for a long time. And it's very hard sometimes to unlearn different routines and habits that they have in that relational piece.
Right. So going a little bit deeper into like shame and stigma, because I know that there are, historical and cultural, maybe even religious reasons to why some people have shame around certain things in connection to sex. Why do you think that there's shame around sex? Why is it so much like a stickier than shame around other health topics?
I mean, it's so intimate and so vulnerable. It's like talking about going to the bathroom. Like, we all do it, but
Right.
we don't talk about it.
Right.
So I do think the religious institutions in our world have done a number on us. That would probably be like my first one.
Mhm.
But I think people just feel weird talking about it.
Mhm.
But and then they perceive that other people will feel weird talking about it, so they just don't talk about it.
Right. Right. And what's one myth about sex therapy you wish you could permanently retire?
That we touch our clients and that we have sex with our clients.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
I think Hollywood has played a major role in that as
I can't stand that. Like,
yeah.
I am an educated woman. I went to Johns Hopkins, got my master's. Like, I have never touched or will touch a client. Like,
Mhm.
like to think that I'm a sex worker is just beyond my comprehension. Not to like speak down on sex workers. It's just not what we do. That
Right,
is a different realm. They do
right,
amazing work, but it's different from our work.
right. Now, since, you've been working in this field, how has the cultural conversation around sex and mental health, shifted since you started?
Um, so I think it's different in different areas of the country. It's funny
Mhm,
because I used to live in Maryland, I used to live in Virginia, and then I moved to and I've also traveled a lot. So like, for example, I was in Egypt over the summer. And the way that people view sex in Egypt is very different than the way people view sex in Miami. I feel like there are two very big like, it's very polarizing. On one side of the spectrum, it's very stigmatized, it's very shameful, we don't talk about it, we shouldn't be doing this, and on the other side of on the spectrum is hypersexualized, so, like, the OnlyFans models, like, you walk outside, you're seeing a BBL, you're seeing big boobs, like, all the things, highly, highly sexualized, and I
mhm,
think neither of them are going to bring us like, we need to come to the middle.
mhm.
So I think that's really interesting. I think in different parts of the world, it's very, very stigmatized. In some parts of this country, it's very stigmatized, and other parts, it's very free and
Mhm.
like just out there.
What do you think is the difference, right? Because I think about the way that American society operates when it comes to talking about sex or
Mhm.
and then when I look at like certain European societies, there's just like a very free and open
Yeah,
and casuality to it. So what do you think causes that difference there?
I think cultural
Mhm.
pieces. I think religion as well. I mean, I think Miami is very influenced by Latin culture, and I think
Mm.
countries like Colombia, it's very out there in a sexual way. But if you were to go to Jordan or Saudi Arabia, like religion does play a big part. Islamic religion does play a part. The culture a huge part.
Mhm. So, I want you to walk us through why you built Sex Therapy Pro, right?
Mm.
What gap were you seeing that, private practice couldn't fill?
I mean, the gap is very big between the advice you see on Reddit versus the advice you get from a professional. And that gap is not just large in finances, but also accessibility.
Mhm,
Um, you can easily go on a Reddit forum and ask, like, hey, is it normal to ejaculate this amount every day? I don't know.
mhm.
And you'll get an answer, but
Right.
not all advice is good advice. So it's free. And then private practice sex therapy is very expensive, and there probably won't be a sex therapist in your area. And if so, they are very, very busy. So it might take a couple months to see a sex therapist. So what I did was I created a custom AI. I used developers, and I put every resource that I have read in my master's, in my
Mhm,
AASECT certification. And the goal was really to put my brain into an AI that could give people a response quickly, um, easy, and good advice.
right. So I know that everyone, even up until last week's guest, he was talking about using AI with his company, Longevity Plan AI, and using peptides for helping with weight loss and stuff like
Mhm.
that. Um, and I know there's a lot of ambivalence around the use of AI. How do you responsibly, I know you just touched on it a little bit, but how do you responsibly bring AI into something this sensitive without, losing the human or trauma-informed core?
Well, it's a good question. That's why I have my private practice.
Right.
I'm not just leaning on AI. Like, it's
Right.
not just AI. The AI is for people who will never be able to see us, quite
Right.
frankly. It is a tool that people can use that might make them feel better, might make them feel less judged. I've actually just had feedback the other day that said it was better than 5 years of therapy they had received. So
Mm,
I don't think people are going to negate good care. What I would be worried about is if you're a really shitty therapist and you're not doing a good job, yeah, people would rather talk to an AI than you. But
right.
it's not about the connection. People don't go to therapy for our connection. People go to therapy to provide value. You pay money because you're getting value from it. And if we are not giving value to people, people will not value our services.
Right. So, in terms of the platform, who is this platform for? And then I wonder who will be surprised to learn that it's for them, that they can use it as well.
I mean, it's for anybody who has felt guilt, shame, anxiety around sex or had a
Uh,
question around sex. It's a place you
Right.
can go to ask questions. It's a place you can go if you're having erectile dysfunction and you want to do some exercises, cognitive behavioral exercises, and some really functional exercises that you can do to help with that. Premature ejaculation, pain during sex, vaginismus, desire discrepancy. It is really for everyone.
Right. You know, actually, we'll move on to this question first. But if Cushing counseling becomes everything you envision, what does the culture around sex therapy look like in, let's say, 10 years?
Mm, that's a good question. I think that people would be more willing to talk about these things openly. People would be able to come to therapy without shame, without guilt, get what they need and leave. That is our goal. Um, but just destigmatize this whole field. Like, everyone's having sex, so why not talk about it?
Mhm. Yeah. And when you go back to your experience in college, what would you tell your 19-year-old version of yourself now from where you're standing?
Hmm. I think about this question a lot of like, what would you tell yourself like without like giving like lottery numbers or something like
Uh-huh.
that. Um, I wouldn't do anything differently. I've thought about this a lot. I think everything had to happen the way it should have to get here. And I would do everything the same, but without the pain and suffering
Right.
that I went
Right.
through. Like I didn't have to have the same kinds of emotional reactions. And just to stay the course, just to believe that things are gonna get better and they do get better.
Right. Now, in terms of advice, what's a piece of advice that about sex or intimacy that's popular right now on social media in wellness culture that you think is actually wrong or harmful?
Mm, wrong or harmful? Popular piece of advice. I mean, it's hard for me to say a popular piece of advice because if I see something online and I don't see a lot of things that are wrong
Mhm.
because mm, maybe something about porn.
Mm, okay. And
I don't know.
yeah. Do you feel like now that psychology, especially when it comes to sex therapy, is far removed from the Freud days of like obviously the way Freud started and everything he was saying from that a particular child may be processing this thing a certain way because they're thinking about sleeping with a parent or their mother or something to that extent. Do you think that we're far removed from that type of like quote unquote evolutionary psychology when it comes to thinking about sex? Have we really um, matured in our thinking when it comes to that?
For sure.
Yeah.
Like I think Freud had a lot of amazing principles, but his principles around sex and like all of that were a little out there.
Mhm. So I want to, and if you don't mind, I want to go a little bit more, maybe more personal with this.
Mhm.
Has doing this work changed your own relationship with intimacy or vulnerability either for better or for worse?
Um, I think when I was dating, I sometimes would assume negative things. Like, when you hear so many horror stories, you're like, I just like don't want to engage in this. So I think there was a lot of avoidance of like, I don't know about all this. I don't know. Maybe it is better being single. I was like, maybe it is. But I also want to be daring greatly. And like whatever I do, I want to do to the best extent. Like if I'm going to love, I'm going to love really hard. And if I'm going to be sad, I'm going to be really sad.
Right.
And I just think living that way is who I am. And I do think as I've grown in this work is the recognition that authenticity is so important. And if you are not yourself and you cannot be yourself, nobody's going to beat you at being you. So
Right.
if you're trying to be someone else, that person's always going to beat you because it's them.
Now, if someone's listening, and they think, okay, sex therapy isn't for me. Um, my problem is bigger than that. What would you say to them?
What is their problem?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, depends on whether that is, sexual trauma or, you know, this inability to connect with other people, like whatever it is. Like, how would you speak to someone who's saying that they don't think it would work for them?
Maybe they're not ready yet.
Mm.
I mean, I think that we do amazing work in all, like, you think that somebody with less resources and more things that have happened to them can come here and make a difference, but you can't? Why?
Right. Yeah. Now, at the time of your assault, you said that you mentioned the institution didn't believe you then.
Mhm.
Knowing what you know now, what should have happened differently? And do you think universities have actually gotten better at this?
I don't think universities have gotten that better. No.
Mm,
I would hope, but I don't believe they have. Um, what should have happened was he should have been one, they should have told the police. They
mhm,
didn't tell the police.
mm,
That's a big no-no. They should have told
right.
the police. There should have been investigation. There should have been a restraining order on this individual. There should have been I should have had proper clarity as to what the investigation process would have looked like, that I could have a lawyer, I could have support, and things would be equitable and equal. But
Mhm,
you know how it is. And that individual should never have graduated. They
mhm,
shouldn't be holding they shouldn't have gotten off scot-free.
yeah. So, obviously we want to hold a safe space for people who have, endured this a difficult situation like this. How do we then, because I know that it's slightly different, but how do we then approach the person that has been that has actually been falsely accused of sexual assault, right? Had would we define that person as having experienced sexual trauma, like a sexual trauma, or is it more that they have that what they experienced was connected to something that would be categorized as sexual trauma?
It's a good question. I mean, everybody wants to talk about the false accusations.
Mhm.
Everyone wants to talk about it. And does it happen? Yes. Is it rare? Very. It
Mhm.
is very, very rare. But if it does happen, that is traumatic for that person.
Right. But we wouldn't classify it as sexual trauma though.
I mean, it's not something sexually done to
Right.
someone.
Right.
It's not a power-based violence.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I think about that and just wonder, if, how that person, obviously with someone like that, let's say they've received, prison time behind it. Obviously that's obviously a different case now where, you need therapy for
That
maybe
doesn't
something
happen.
else. Yeah. Okay.
That doesn't happen. People are not going to go to prison. I mean,
Mhm.
1 in 100 women report what has happened to them. 1 in,
Mhm.
like, 100, and in that, it's thousands and thousands of people who will go through I have never ever, in my entire career,
Mhm.
seen any perpetrator have any sort of legal implications, ever,
Oh,
ever.
wow.
So they're not going to jail. I promise you that. And if they go to jail, they did that shit because they have concrete evidence. And I mean concrete, I mean video evidence that they did that shit. They did it.
Wow.
If they
Right.
are in jail, they are not falsely accused. I'm sorry. Like, I
Right.
cannot believe that the justice system, we would go all the way there to, like, there is video evidence. There's
Right.
video, DNA, every sort of evidence against that person because it is so goddamn hard to convict anyway. Nobody's in jail that didn't do it. 100%.
Right.
I do
Wow.
not believe that.
Right. Right. Wow. So, as you're doing this work, and I know you've spoken on some of the transformations that you've seen. Um, what is one major thing you would say that you are, apart from the development of the AI and everything else, what is one major thing that you are proud of in regards to the work that you've been doing?
I'm so proud of what I've built at Cushing Counseling. I'm so proud that I have 3 incredible clinicians that I get to see grow, and I get to see grow throughout their time as a therapist, and then I get to hear about their clients and the people that they are helping and serving, and I am so grateful to be able to do this work and support them, and not just support them, but also they have they have a better experience with me than they have ever had in any other practice. I've had clinicians be completely, used at other practices financially, and they come here and I have one therapist who was working below the poverty line doing the same work, and now she's making $100,000. Like, I'm so proud of that. I'm so proud of being able to work so fucking hard so my people can reap the benefits.
Right. Obviously now, as I said, having a child, having a daughter, I do think about, certain power dynamics, and I wonder about, how, my daughter's going to have to navigate certain situations, and I hope she never has to go through anything like that ever. Um, but what are we doing to prepare kids, especially your institution as well, is doing to prepare children for situations where they could experience sexual trauma? Like, what verbiage are we using? What language are we using to help them identify if they could be victims of sexual trauma?
I mean, consent-based language, sexual assertiveness, saying no. Like, you want a sexually assertive woman, and you want to start that at an early age. Okay, I don't like the way my uncle smells. Okay, well, say no when he wants to hug you.
Mm.
Say no to all of these things, and then you have a child that says no. You have a woman that says no. And it is not her fault if someone chooses to do something to her after that no.
Right.
It's not her fault.
So, the shifting gears a bit, how do you tell the difference between like a desired discrepancy that's fixable, through communication versus one that points to something deeper in a relationship?
What do you mean deeper?
So let's say that there's, like how I pointed out earlier about the, emotional issues or connection issues. Sometimes people have spouses that, say, some really hurtful and demeaning things. And it makes it difficult for whether it's a husband or wife or, depending on the type of connection there, where one partner is like unapologetic and they don't want to make amends for what they said or what they've done. Um, how do we deal with those like deeper issues in the relationship?
I mean, that sounds like abuse to me.
Mm,
If you
yeah,
are going to verbally berate your partner and then not take accountability or apologize, that sounds like abuse.
right, right. And then, because at that point, right, where you then there's a person going through that, should they point out to their partner again? Because of course, as partners, we're not experts on what abuse is, or we may be able to say like, this feels like abuse, but I'm not sure. Should we then be looking to include a third party, like an expert who says, this sounds like, emotional abuse. This sounds like, sexual abuse, whatever it is. Should we then start to include that person?
I mean, I think the should is very dangerous because I
Hmm.
think if I said, oh, you should do this, then if somebody went and did it and then they're hurt because of it is very dangerous. I think that people need to do what they need to do to keep themselves safe.
Right.
And I cannot determine for you what safety would look like in your relationship and how to keep yourself safe.
Hmm. Hmm. And just to get a little bit more sciencey, what role does the nervous system play in sexual trauma recovery, and how much of this work is talk therapy versus body based?
I mean, I think talk therapy is also body based and somatic.
Hmm.
Of course, the nervous system, if you're feeling flooded, your nervous system is activated. So, like, if you're flooded, we're not going to be able to do any of the work until our body recognizes safety.
Hmm.
We have to feel safe in order to feel okay. So creating safety in your body, what that feels like, and being able to say, okay, these things in sex don't feel good to me. And my nervous system will be activated. And because my nervous system is activated, I will not be able to enjoy this activity.
Right.
So we have to avoid these things and titrate it. Um, yeah.
Yeah. I was talking to Kelly Jensen yesterday, who's been doing some work around transcranial migration stimulation. That's what S stands for,
Mm,
TMS. And so
PMS,
she's been, yeah, so she's been working with people who, are experiencing depression,
yeah.
and sometimes dealing with suicidal ideation. How familiar are you with TMS? And if you are, do you see it being helpful in, helping clients who have dealt with sexual trauma?
I don't have a ton of experience with TMS. For what I've seen, I don't love, but I will say I do like ketamine-assisted therapy. I
Mm,
think ketamine-assisted therapy is incredible. When it's done with a licensed therapist and a doctor who can give the injection, you're able to access those memories much easier with much less flooding. I
mhm.
like ketamine a lot.
What is it about ketamine at a biological level that makes that better, I guess?
I don't know because I'm more of the psychological. I'll
Mhm.
do the interventions, but there's an amazing physician. His name is Dr. David Matthey. He went to Hopkins with me, and I'll get you in touch with him if you would like. He is
Mhm.
an expert in ketamine. He can answer all those questions. He
Okay.
did all the clinical trials at Hopkins.
Okay, great, great. And how do you handle a session when one partner, we kind of touched on this already, but one partner is ready to do the work and the other really isn't?
Mm, so, not great.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to ask, okay, on a scale to 1 to 10, how motivated are you to do this work? If one partner's at an 8 and one partner's at a 1, that's a problem.
What I want to do is kind of move into, even though it's a very serious topic, but I want to move into like a rapid fire questions, just like 4 questions, nothing crazy. And then, we'll close out. Okay. All right. So
Okay.
what's one word most people misuse when talking about sex therapy?
When talking about sex therapy,
Hmm.
um, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I think it's erotic. Erotic.
Right.
That's a good one.
Right. Okay. The most common thing couples wait too long to say it to each other.
They wait too long to say everything to each other. Just say what you mean.
Mm,
Just communicate.
yeah. What's a book or resource you recommend to almost every client?
Oh, Barry McCarthy. He's the best. Rekindling Sexual Desire.
Okay.
Also, Emily Nagoski. I have to throw that one out there. She's Come As You Are is like the OG.
Mm, okay. And then last question, something you believed about intimacy in your 20s that you don't believe now.
Mm, that like the best sex you have is when you're young.
Got it. Got it.
That's like the worst sex you have, actually.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, I really do appreciate this, Vanessa. And definitely please let our audience know where they can connect with you and work with you as
Mhm.
well.
CushingCounseling.com, also sextherapypro.ai. I have Instagram, YouTube, all the things, and I make fun little videos about sex.
All right, perfect. Well, Vanessa, I really do appreciate this. I appreciate you taking the time. And again, this is just Stefan reminding you that choosing health is about choosing power, possibility, and purpose.